Happening now, a rescue operation is underway for a juvenile humpback whale trapped in a net inside Sydney Harbour. Let's go live now to James Wilson, who is on the harbour. James, what can you see where you are?
Sophie, this has been happening for a few hours now. We're just off Shark Island as well as Rose Bay and Watson's Bay. And in the distance here, you can see a group of orange buoys. They've been attached to a net which is dragging behind this humpback whale in Sydney Harbour. And that is to slow this whale down. The animal is obviously distressed. It has a net with buoys attached to it, which we believe is actually hooked into its fin. And right now you can see in the distance this whale continues to breach as rescue volunteers try to get close to it to untangle this mess. It is quite unusual to see whales this far into Sydney Harbour, and obviously what we're dealing with now is a whale that could be both sick, distressed and needing to be rescued. Sophie, this was actually spotted by a whale watching cruise around 1:20 this afternoon. They called orca volunteers who've since come down here and deployed and are now trying to rescue this whale. As I mentioned, there are reports that maybe a hook is hooked into its pectoral fin, which makes this even more challenging. And at the moment, as we said, it's a net with ropes that is dragging around 20 metres behind the whale, and it's been cutting laps all through Sydney Harbour this afternoon in distress. It's definitely slowing down now with the help of these orange buoys, and volunteers are now in a position where they can reach the whale and hopefully untangle it and set it free.
He's hoping that whale is freed soon. James Wilson with that report, thank you. Turning to our breaking news now, and rescuers are right now working to free a juvenile humpback whale trapped in a net inside Sydney Harbour. Let's go back to James Wilson, who is on the harbour for us. James, what's the latest where you are?
Sophie, this whale's just made a run straight towards Watson's Bay, and you can see behind it these orange buoys that volunteers have attached to a net to try and slow this juvenile humpback down. And this is what we've seen over the last half an hour, really, this distressed whale being slowed down, being exhausted, allowing volunteers to get close to it to try and cut out this netting before it once again freaks out and then takes off and does laps around Sydney Harbour. But right now, Sophie, this is a race against the clock. These are National Parks and Wildlife rescuers, and they will not operate at night. So really, we only have about an hour's left of daylight for these guys to get up close to the whale, cut this netting off and set it free. If they can't do that in time, then this whale will be left to its own devices overnight. And that is not a scenario that anybody here wants. As we mentioned, Sophie, this whale was spotted around 1:20 this afternoon by a whale watching group. They called in volunteers from Orca to help out and coordinate this rescue effort. But as I mentioned, you can see it again breaching in the background over there. It's making runs and making it extremely difficult for rescuers to untangle it and set it free. Sophie?
It is certainly a distressing situation. We are hoping for some good news soon. James Wilson with that report. Thank you.
Let's go to breaking news on Sydney Harbour now, where we find Nine News reporter James Wilson. James, there's been an urgent mission to free a whale.
Yeah, Pete, in the last half an hour, rescuers have had to abandon that operation due to failing light. They were unable to cut a rope that was wrapped around this juvenile humpback's tail free. They have, however, managed to put a GPS tracker on this whale, which means there is hope that tomorrow they can track it down and go again. The last we saw, this whale actually was heading out of Sydney Heads into the ocean, but we've since learned that this whale has turned back around and made its way into Sydney Harbour. It certainly isn't the happy ending we were hoping, but it was quite an epic rescue operation this afternoon. Here's how it unfolded.
Below the surface of our harbour, trouble for a gentle giant. A juvenile humpback whale caught with a rope around its tail.
This whale's just made a run straight towards Watson's Bay. This is a race against the clock. These are National Parks and Wildlife rescuers, and they will not operate at night.
It was a whale watching tour group that spotted the animal in distress just before 1:30 this afternoon. The humpback momentarily breaching off waters near Mossman, further into the harbour near Shark Island, a multi-agency entanglement operation with not a second to spare.
Right now you can see in the distance this whale continues to breach as rescue volunteers try to get close to it to untangle this mess.
Volunteers attaching orange buoys to the netting in an effort to slow the whale down and cut it free.
It's really, really big, dangerous job. and it's gone directly into a harbour where we can kind of keep it there and keep eyes on it.
Crews now keeping a close eye on the animal until they can try again tomorrow. In Sydney Harbour, James Wilson, 9 News.